Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. You guys had to know it was coming, right? I did my initial review, which I think was like 3.5 hours in. I did a 30-hour review, I did a main quest review, and you know what? Now it's time for my 100+ hour and final review of Starfield. Before we get into it, just a couple things. This is going to be a spoiler video. I'm talking about everything today. So if you haven't beaten the game, go finish it and come back. This video will be here when you're done. And then I've been hyping Starfield up these past couple weeks, and while I still have a lot of good I want to talk about today, I am going to be talking about some more negative things as well. That being said, Starfield is one of the best games I have ever played, and it is by far my favorite Bethesda game, and may end up being my favorite game of all time. These 100 hours have been an absolute blast, and I feel like I'm nowhere near actually being done with the game. I have gotten lost in Starfield in a way that I just haven't been able to with other RPGs. Maybe my tastes are changing as I get older, but I've always really struggled to get into RPGs. Even The Outer Worlds, another RPG that I could argue as being my favorite game of all time as well, took me a couple tries to get into. But with Starfield, I was hooked from the beginning. And while I do have some critiques, which I'll be talking about today, I absolutely adore this game. One reason this game works so well for me is because the character I wanted to roleplay as going into this game was a pirate hunter. And this game really delivered in a couple of ways. The mission boards with readily available bounties kept me bouncing between systems. And then, besides that, you were constantly running into the Crimson Fleet, Spacers, mercenaries, or Varun, all throughout the galaxy. On top of that, not only can you blow their ships out of the sky, but you can also dock onto their ships for a more personal touch, which I love so much. It gives you options to dealing with these pirates. Then, the game also featured multiple quests that allowed me to fulfill these pirate hunting dreams, but that's something we'll talk about a little later in the video. I really like the time frame that this game is set in, because we've advanced far enough in technology that we can explore the stars, but at the same time, we're still kind of new at it. Settings like Star Wars, which I love, the universe has already been explored, but here, there's still a sense of discovery and wonder. And I think the NASA punk aesthetic was perfect to portray this time between discovering spaceflight and being a full galactic civilization. Now, a couple quick things that I've touched on in other videos, so I'm not going to go too in-depth here today, but believe should be still discussed in this video, are the fact that the main story is really good. I thought it was beautiful and loved getting to experience it. The mystery of the Starborn and the artifacts and the way the story unfolded that mystery was just so cool. I was sitting on the edge of my seat with anticipation for every bit of lore I could find. Outpost building is good, I really enjoy it, but I do think it could be improved in several ways. On the other hand, shipbuilding is absolutely amazing. I think it's perfect, if I'm being honest. I spend hours just tinkering with all the different options, trying to make the best ship possible. Let's just get the bad out of the way. The one thing that genuinely bothers me in this game is the ladders. I hate that I can't choose where I want them to be in my ship. I hate how awkward it is to use them. I hate how it changes you to a third-person perspective to climb, which isn't bad, except for the fact that it's super disorientating when you switch back to first-person perspective, because it changes where you're facing if you try and move while it's switching. I really hope they improve this in the future. And then, something that genuinely hurt my enjoyment of this game is the fact that companions sometimes get locked in as your set companion until you complete a certain quest. Which I understand you need them for the quest, but it feels like it's forcing me down a specific path that I don't want to do at this moment. And I think taking away that freedom from players is never a good idea in a game like this. That being said, the companion quests have been great so far. I just don't like being told when to do them. Onto the bugs though, I've heard it said by multiple creators that this is a hot, buggy mess, and after 100 hours, I completely disagree. This game has bugs, yes, but it is not a hot, buggy mess. and most of the bugs I've encountered are funny bugs that make me laugh. But to be fair, I have had 2 game-breaking bugs so far where it actually crashed my game, and that sucks, but 2 in 100 hours I don't think is that bad. Then, this bug didn't ruin my experience or anything, but at some random point I lost Lynn and Heller. They were part of my crew, they were on my ship, they were in my crew tab, and then they weren't? I have no idea what happened to them. I looked online and someone said to check your activities menu, but when I did, I couldn't find anything on them. I think they got off my ship on a planet, and then I left without them, if I'm being honest, and I have no idea what planet that was. Like I said, this bug didn't ruin my experience or anything, but I have spent like 70 hours wondering what happened to them. Now I want to talk about some of the funny bugs I've encountered. So I think my favorite bug is when Vasco just chills on top of your ship. For me, Vasco sits right in front of my missile launcher, so I like to imagine him loading the missiles in for me, especially because I have a slow reload on the missile launcher that I have equipped. And you know what? Vasco's just taking his time getting everything ready for me. I had a bug where Sarah and Walter had a conversation while Sarah was on my ship and Walter was in the lodge. This one really freaked me out at first, and I did get stuck because I tried to talk to Walter as well and ended up just looking at a wall with no dialogue options. Lastly, I wanted to talk about this bug where Barrett decided to stand in my lap and Sarah decided to defy God.
Michael, don't leave me here. Michael!
I did, however, have one bug that really genuinely hurt my enjoyment of the game. About halfway through the game, I got a quest from Barrett where he became locked in as my companion, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of him. And when I say I couldn't figure it out, I genuinely got stuck with Barrett for like 40 hours of gameplay. Now, to be clear, I really like Barrett. I think he's one of the best companions in the game, and his questline is really good and emotional, but I found it incredibly frustrating that I couldn't switch him out. Especially when I had a stealth mission in Neon and he decided to just start firing on civilians. So what happened was, it was the Worlds Apart quest, and Barrett wanted to acquire power from the temples. I didn't read what quest it was when it first popped up. I just figured it was a normal Power Beyond quest, which, you know what, that's on me, that's my fault, I'll take accountability for that. However, it was not. On top of that, it was only listed in the All Quest tab, which I personally never use. I find it easier to just scroll through the correct tab, but I searched through all the other tabs, including the MISC tab, where it should have been, and it just wasn't listed there. On top of that, when I asked another companion to accompany me, I was told I needed to finish the No Sudden Moves quest before I could switch companions. The problem is, I had already finished that quest, so I thought I was just stuck. Well, eventually I got tired of it and just asked Barrett to stop being my companion, and that's when I found out about the Worlds Apart quest, which I immediately went and finished it, and then as I was talking to Barrett after it was done, it started another locked-in quest. I kid you not. I cannot tell you how flabbergasted I was. At this point, I wasn't even playing the game. I just sped ran through his final quest as quickly as I could. And then, after it was all done, this man has the balls to ask me out. Barrett, we just spent 40 hours together. I need some space. And you know what? We just solved your dead husband's cold case. Take some time to process that emotionally first, please. Anyway, I friend-zoned him. I don't know. Personally, I don't really like romance in RPGs. I've never romanced a companion or NPC before. I do, however, think it's cool it's there for players that want it, though. But that's just not what I'm personally looking for in video games. I found it kind of frustrating that even though I never chose the flirt option, it still came to this conclusion. It kind of pulled me out of the immersion of the game. Barrett was the first companion whose quest I'd finished, and now I'm dreading Sarah and Andrasia's quest, knowing they're still going to make a move. R.I.P. Sam. But hey, at least I get the option to friend zone them too. Onto the combat and AI, like I've mentioned in previous videos, I don't think the AI is brain dead, but I do think it could use some improvements. That being said, combat is still a ton of fun. Between the massive gun variety and all the ways you can mod them, and then the unique powers, there are a ton of fun ways you can deal with your enemies. The guns feel pretty good to use, except for pistols. I don't know what it is, but they feel really clunky to me. Some of my favorite moments have been entering a room and seeing a ton of enemy markers show up on my watch as I realize that I'm gonna have to really think carefully about how I fight my way through. Or barely dodging out of the way as a Terramorph slams its fist on the ground trying to get me. On the other hand, the powers make me feel too powerful for my own good. There's no feeling like throwing up your reactive shield and then just standing in front of an enemy as they shoot you, or turning off the gravity around us and watching as my foes float up helpless to stop me. Ship combat is also a ton of fun. I love the fact that you can shift power around to fit that specific moment's needs, and I've dropped like 400,000 plus credits on my flagship, the Renegade, that at this point, my weapons are so powerful and my shields are so strong that nothing really ever gives me a challenge. That being said, I have not faced the Varun Shroudbreaker yet, and I'm kinda nervous too, but I think I might try it out soon. Let's take a moment to talk about aliens, what they are and what they aren't. I absolutely love the fauna we get in Starfield. The creatures are just so unique, and they range from cute and adorable to massive and terrifying. I spend a lot of time just exploring, trying to find all the different species. I really like Starfield's approach to alien life. They could have added sentient alien species also faring the stars, but they didn't. It's just humanity, and I love the feeling of almost loneliness it gives me. I've really gone back and forth on the subject because sentient aliens would have been really cool. But after thinking about it a lot, I really do think Bethesda made the right choice not adding other sentient life. And maybe in future DLC or sequels we will get it, but I think for this game right now, it was perfect. Crafting is pretty simple. It's not as in-depth as I think a lot of people want it to be, but also this isn't a survival game. The crafting isn't required, but it is a really nice way to upgrade your equipment. The UI, again, not as bad as I think some people make it out to be, but I do think it's something that could be better, but not awful. Something I've talked about in previous videos is the fact that I wish there were more POIs, which I would still love to see and think we will see in DLC, but I found so many more locations since then, and I realized that the galaxy has a lot more in it than what it seems, and really it just takes exploring to find. Talking about exploring, a lot of creators have harped on this game for its bad exploration, and I have to disagree. This game has a stupid amount of things to find and do, but you have to explore differently than what you would in an open world game like Skyrim. But I don't think different means bad. I genuinely love getting to explore in this game. About a third of the temples that I've finished are ones that I've found while just naturally exploring the galaxy. And I will say, that is a way more exciting experience than going and talking to Vlad. Which, I love Vlad, I just hate having to go back and talk to him between each temple. I love getting to walk around a planet and discover what kind of wildlife it has. And then, Bethesda has just jam-packed this game with stuff to find and encounters to, well, encounter. The planets are also exactly what I wanted them to be. At this point in history, humanity has expanded throughout the stars, but they're still finding their way. They're still new at it. They have not established some massive government that spans the entire galaxy like in Star Wars. Most of these planets are pretty empty in terms of human involvement. They have outposts and a few things to explore, but that's about it. And I think they're exactly what they are meant to be. Just natural planets untouched by humanity, and I think that's beautiful. But I do think this is a good time to talk about procedural generation. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan when I heard how much they were using it, but after playing through the main campaign, I've realized that with the story they wanted to tell and the multiverses and Unity's part in that story, this really was the best route for them to go down. Now each playthrough can feel at least a little unique from the last. You won't be visiting Indom 2 every time you leave Unity to get that one specific animal or that one specific resource. You have to go out and explore and find it again, and there will always be something new to discover, and that is amazing. On top of having a lot to discover, Starfield has some of the best quests I've experienced in gaming, and I just wanted to take a couple moments to discuss some of my favorite. The Mantis quest was so cool, just getting to explore through this old vigilante's lair. The combat here was a ton of fun. The mix of spacers, robots, and turrets made for an interesting challenge. And then, just being honest, I'm really bad at puzzles, but I was able to figure out the floor puzzle all by myself, and that was one of the most satisfying moments I've had in a video game. And it wasn't even that hard of a puzzle, but man did it feel good just solving it. One of my favorite things about this game is the fact that sometimes you'll run into spacers in space that recognize the razor leaf and will flee, which just feels so good. It fits perfectly for the character I'm trying to roleplay as. The villains of this galaxy know and fear my name. Crix's Legacy.
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
I absolutely adored this quest. As I stated earlier in the video, I just wanted to do a pirate hunter run. I wanted to burn the Crimson Fleet to the ground, and boy did this game let me. I knew the Crimson Fleet had a base somewhere in the game, but my plan was to just level up until I got strong enough to actually go face them myself. I was not expecting the game to actually have a full quest line dedicated to bringing them down. I really loved getting to join SysDev and infiltrate the Crimson Fleet. I love the One Piece inspired story. I loved getting to rise through the ranks of the fleet and then see the look on their faces as I led the invading forces against them. A couple things that really stuck out to me was the fact that in the final battle, I was able to recognize names of ships I was fighting, like the Jade Swan, because I had a quest that involved joining their crew temporarily. The game made me connect to the pirates in a way that I just wasn't expecting. And that final choice to attack the fleet was a little harder to make. Also, I feel awful. I meant to tell Mathis, hey, don't come to school tomorrow, but I forgot. And I was so sad when I was standing over the bodies of my victims and I realized he was there too. And then, when I finished it all and was awarded with 250,000 credits, my jaw dropped. Let's be honest though, the UC's never returning that money to the Freestar Collective. They've probably already spent it, which makes me wish I had an option to take it to them directly. Honestly though, besides the main quest, I think this is the best quest line in the entire game. The Crucible quest was not one that I was expecting at all. A planet filled with clones of ancient historical figures was such a cool idea. I loved and hated the fact that I had to make a choice between the three factions. And I personally chose Genghis Khan because he seemed so genuine about wanting to escape the planet. And also, I really wanted to get Amelia Earhart as my co-pilot, and that seemed like the most likely way to do it. During my time in Crucible, I was able to broker a peace between the Renegades and the Pragmatics. So, both Genghis Khan and Franklin D. Roosevelt both got what they wanted. However, I was not able to find a peaceful way to please the believers, and sadly had to fight them. I think I really messed up though, you guys. I believed Genghis Khan and in his ability to be something more than what his original self was. And I was wrong. My heart breaks every time I jump into a system and hear screaming as he finishes off his victims, and then he dedicates that victory to me and jumps away before I have a chance to destroy his ship. I brought down the Crimson Fleet only to release something much worse on the galaxy, and I really hope I get the chance to face him someday. In terms of dialogue, I have really mixed feelings about this game, because some of it just isn't that great, especially when there's like a scene where people are cheering for you, but I think when it really needs to hit, it does. These characters have really made me feel something. Like Genghis Khan, he genuinely convinced me he just wanted to be free. But then there are other moments where your dialogue choice just doesn't matter. You can click on any of the options, but sometimes after saying something, it takes you back to the original options, and you have to figure out what choice the game wants you to make to move the story forward. And sometimes it's great, it gives you a chance to learn more about the world or characters, but a lot of the times it's, like I said, just very immersion breaking, especially when there's a dialogue choice you don't want to pick, but you have to move the conversation forward. I know they've already written like 200,000 plus lines of dialogue for this game, but I really do hope they add more as updates and DLC come out. You guys know I'm a big lore guy, right? I love lore. It's one of the things I love most about video games, and the lore behind this game goes hard. Bethesda brought their A game when it came to creating this part of the story. The world feels lived in, like there's actual history to it. That events have happened before it entered the story, and more will happen after. We have dates for when big things happen. We have fleshed out factions with their own political systems and strong opinions about the other factions. The game explains what happens to Earth and why humanity had to move to the star. And there's a whole museum with super interesting facts. Like, it's a lore guy's dream come true. And then on top of that, it adds the mystery of the artifacts and the Starborn and Unity, which gave me something to strive to find. Honestly, if I'm not careful, this is going to become a Starfield lore channel, because I already have 3 videos in the works and ideas for more. I know my thoughts have been a little scattered today, but I think the best way I can describe Starfield, for me, would be an imperfect 10 out of 10. A flawed masterpiece. I recognize its flaws. I recognize there are areas where it could be better, but I don't care, because these past 100 or so hours of gameplay have been some of the most fun I've ever had in a game. Like I stated earlier in the video, Starfield has just sucked me into it in a way that most games have not. And I recognize that I'm going to experience one of my new favorite games, stories, and universes for the first time. And that is something I will never get back. I will never get to feel the hype of seeing the Starborn for the first time again. I will never get to experience discovering what Unity was again. And I know here in a couple years, I'm going to be wishing I could forget all of this, so I could experience it again with fresh eyes. And so I'm just trying to take in as much as I can about Starfield right now. I'm trying to appreciate every little detail, every quest, and every line of dialogue I can find. I truly love this game. I know I've put out a lot of Starfield content these last couple of weeks, and I'm hoping I can keep it up. But either way, I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for going on this journey with me, and I will see you in the Starfield.